The thing about journalists instead of bemoaning, states of the industry as much as we do, because it's been our job, they put their head down and work. Um, because it's very important. They understand the importance of it and they love it. I mean, it's in your blood when you're doing stuff like that. And I think there are enough people that want to do that sort of thing that make me feel optimistic.
Hey everybody, welcome in. Tom Jones from the Poynter Report Podcast. We have a really great guest today, David Bauder, longtime Associated Press media writer. He's covered media for the past 40 years, media, television, music even. We talk about the future of the industry. We talk about what it's like to cover Trump, the differences he's made in media coverage, and what's he optimistic about for the future. That's all coming up on today's Poynter Report Podcast.
From the worldwide leader in journalism, truth, and democracy, this is the Poynter Report Podcast, a joint production between the Poynter Institute and the Department of Journalism and Digital Communication at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg. Now here's your host from the Poynter Institute, Tom Jones.
All right, Dave Bauder, welcome back to the podcast. Again, this is your second time joining us. You joined us a couple of seasons ago, although this time you come with news. You just announced a couple of weeks ago that you accepted a buyout from the Associated Press. So you're retired from the AP, but not really retired from the business. We'll get into all of that, but welcome back. Thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thank you. This all happened pretty suddenly with the AP, but I think the timing was right and the deal was good. So it's time to try something new.
I'm envious. I'm envious of not having it, getting up in the morning and not having to do anything if you don't want to do anything. But I know you're such immersed in this world, and that's why we want to talk to you. But I know you're not done working as well. We'll talk a little bit about that. Take me back. When exactly did you start with the AP?
I started with the AP back in 1987 in Albany, New York, and I worked up there for about 10 years, much of that time in the Capitol, straddling the Mario Cuomo and George Pataki administrations. But I also, as a sidelight, we had no music writer at the Associated Press at the time, and I took it upon myself to write a lot about music. So it was a strange life. There would be people in Albany who didn't realize that I did music stories sometimes, and people outside in the rest of the country were like, "You cover politics too?" So they had a job opening for a television writer at the AP in '96, and I came down and started to do that. And it kind of morphed into being the media writer, maybe about 10, 12 years or so ago.
When during your music career or writing for, who were some of the, I know you and I, a while back, I talked about something, somehow you and I communicated through email, and you brought up like, oh, I've talked to Dave Grohl a couple of times. And I'm like, wait, what? And you said, yeah, I used to be a music writer at the AP. Who were some of your favorite people that you talked to in the music industry?
Oh God, I've been fortunate to speak to many of my heroes and things like that. Lucinda Williams and Elvis Costello and David Byrne, and I've done 3 out of the 4 Beatles. Paul and George and Ringo, a couple of them multiple times. So I mean, that's pretty amazing to me that I've been able to have the chance to sit down and talk with people like that. And learn about their music and get to know them a little bit, and it's been wonderful.
I was pleased that the New York Times recently came out with their 30 greatest living American songwriters. And I was so excited Lucinda Williams made the list. Like there were some people that I thought would have made it. Billy Joel, I did Randy Newman, but I thought it was really cool Lucinda Williams was on the list.
Yeah, Lucinda, I mean, she's very deserving. She's a wonderful person and a wonderful writer, a huge amount of talent. So she definitely deserved to be there. But yeah, I know some fans of Billy Joel were a little bit upset about that particular one. It's that's the thing with lists like that. You're always going to get some people a little bit annoyed, and I can see why people like Billy Joel might be upset. I can see why. I can see modern. I can see why a Jason Isbell fan would be upset to not be involved in something like that. But that's part and parcel of lists like that. it's made for arguments.
Exactly. We were somebody in the office was arguing with me the other day about the list. I'm like, here we are, a week and a half later, we're still talking about the list. So it
Yeah.
succeeded. What was? It sounds like the music thing would have been like that's almost like a dream job. Why was it not full time? Like, what? Why did you not stick with that? And why did you make the move to TV or eventually the media?
We had no full-time music writer at the Associated Press when I started doing some of those things. And in fact, when I was in Albany, I came down to New York to try to convince the executive editor at the time to name a music writer. And part of my argument was, you have three people covering television and nobody covering music. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
So ironically, then I became a television writer, but I still did music. And when they finally decided to name somebody right around the turn of the century, um, in some ways I kind of aged out of it. I thought, I mean, I'm a white guy of a certain age, and rap music is the most important art form. I can't pretend to know that as well. And
Right.
I wasn't really interested in covering Britney Spears at the time or things like that. I liked being able to pick and choose what I wanted to do and not have it be a full-time job. I mean, that's one of the advantages for me to being at the AP, is that I've been able to do different things. I mean, if I went somewhere else, they probably wouldn't want me to cover some music things or do all sorts of those things. The AP has given me the freedom to do some of that.
You said you were doing the TV job and it sort of morphed into the media world. Was that your choosing, or was that the people there at the AP? How did it morph into something into more media?
It wasn't definitively said in many ways. As time went on, I became less interested in covering the entertainment aspect of television. And I've always been interested in covering media issues and things. And, obviously I did most of it from the TV standpoint of things. And after a while, there are things we covered media from a business standpoint to a certain extent, but media issues we really didn't do in a general way as much. And I kind of enjoyed the chance to do something like that and to broaden the aperture in a way of doing these sort of things. And the last couple of years, quite obviously, have been the busiest on the beat and probably some of the most important work I've done in my career.
Sure.
So it's been a lot of fun and rewarding.
When would you say you were you went full-time media writer? Like around what year? And what was it like? Can you remember any specific stories that you were writing at the time?
Oh boy. I mean, a lot of it, I guess it was kind of in the mid 90s or so. And, you cover a lot. I mean, a lot was going on with Fox News at the time, and Roger Ailes were
Right.
the leadership change there. And it was the rise of streaming and broadcast being less important. So it meant a lot of different changes in all sorts of things. And then obviously with President Trump coming on in the late 90s, I mean, that was a huge story right there, and continues to be a huge story today, because in many respects, the news industry still doesn't really know how to cover them. They've never seen anything like them before, and I don't know if they will again.
Yeah, I want to get into a little bit to Trump in just a moment, but what is it about I covered sports for a long time, and I wrote about sports media, and I also wrote I was a general sports columnist. I can tell you that I never got more reaction from readers and the audience than when I did write about sports media. What is it about the media, do you think, that fascinates people? Why not just me, but media coverage? It's a very popular beat. We see now there's a million newsletters about the media. There's even a newsletter about the newsletters of media,
Yes.
which media I started recently. What is it about media coverage, do you think, fascinates people so much?
It's the prism through which people see the world, and I think so people are interested in the people who are doing it and how they do it. So I think and they all have their opinions of the people who are doing these things. So I think there's a real fascination, and I think we at the Associated Press, still say we, um, yeah, found out over the past couple of years as we looked at metrics, there really is a fascination for it and an interest in that sort of thing, and I think it maybe surprised people at the time, but again, it's how they see the world and the lens through which they see the world. So um, they're sure to be interested in it for that reason.
No, I think you hit on it too when you said it's. I think it's a shared experience because especially when I was writing about like a sports broadcast, if I'm writing about the Super Bowl, the audience was watching the Super Bowl at the same time I was, and they were having the same reaction to the announcers or to the broadcast or to the production or whatever. And I think the same thing now. People are reading the New York Times like I'm reading it, or watching CNN or Fox like we're watching it. So I really do think that's
they're yelling. They're yelling back at the television set, and just like we do sometimes. And gee, I wish they'd do it this way. Or I have a definite idea of how the question that they should ask, or something like that. Why did they ask that question and not something else? Why did they do it this way? I just people are fascinated.
Over the time that you've been covering and been into business, almost nearly 40 years now, have in the media, have you seen winners and losers? I mean, is there anybody, like I look at the New York Times and what the New York Times has done the last, I don't know, 5 years, maybe a little bit longer. It's been remarkable to me. And then at the same time, you look at local news, which I think has really struggled, just keeping up with the resources and subscribers and the cost of print. We see, I mean, have you thought enough, like who have been some of the winners and losers, do you think, in media over the time you've been covering it?
You stole my thunder, Tom. I mean, I was thinking kind of exactly the same thing. I mean, it's really fascinating the way the Times has grown. I mean, they've doubled their staff basically over the last 10 years. And a lot of it is funded through their ancillary products, Wordle, Wirecutter, their product site, and the cooking app and stuff like that. But they have funneled that money back into their journalism and doing creative things like their video journalism that they did do, the video forensics that they do. A very successful podcast, The Daily. They have added people in many different ways and been heads and tails above everybody else in the business. And that's a good thing. You want one of the best in the business to be healthy, because somebody's got to be healthy. I mean, because when you talk about losers, I mean, it's almost everybody else. I don't mean to be too negative, because there are obviously a lot of success stories that are out there, but just the slow moving death of the news industry over the past 20 years is one of those. It's not one of those stories that happens every day. You're not reminded of it every day unless a newspaper happens to close or something like that. But I was looking up some statistics before I talked to you, and in 2005, there are 365,000 people working at newspapers, and in 2025, it was 91,000. 20 years ago, 71% of journalists worked at newspapers, and now it's 29%. And it's just one facet of the industry, but those numbers are astounding when you think about it. Just how this has happened and the impact it has had on generations of people, and growing up with the news and being interested in the news and things like that. And as I said, there are success stories of things that have tried to make it through, but particularly on the local level, all across the country, there are so many tragic stories of voices lost and newspapers lost.
Right. Have we overblown the demise of the Washington Post, do you think, or is there some real concerns there?
Certainly, there's some real concerns there. I mean, they cut, what was it, more than a third of their staff. They're having real money problems and circulation and things like that. I mean, it's, I mean, society benefited when the Times and the Washington Post were both going at each other hammer and tongs and being very competitive. And it's not to say they're not competitive now, but um, it's certainly diminished the way it was. Although I remember last year, about this time, I was pitched by the Washington Post to do something about their coverage of the administration and Doge. And my first instinct was they're trying to change the subject here because there's so many negative stories. They want something positive out there. And so I was suspicious, but I looked at some of the work and I saw some of the work they was doing was very impressive, and I thought it was worth writing about. And they just won a Pulitzer Prize for it, so I'm glad I made that decision.
Right.
There are still, despite some of the business things going on, a lot of really good journalists doing a lot of good work at the Post and many other places.
Sure, exactly. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I do want to ask Dave about Trump coverage, whether we've gotten sucked into covering too much Trump as we cover the media. But a quick reminder, if you like this conversations about the media, please give us an excellent rating if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're traveling or working out, going on a walk, you can listen to us on Apple, Google, or Spotify. We appreciate you listening. And don't forget that excellent rating. Back more with Dave Bauder in just a moment.
Take your career to the next level. The University of South Florida, St. Petersburg, is offering a master's degree in digital journalism and design. Do the entire program from home and complete it in as little as 1 year. For more information, email journalism@usf.edu or call 727-873-4544. The cost is reasonable. The experience is invaluable.
Dave, I mentioned before the break, we talk a lot about Trump, and really the last couple of years, it just seems like those of us in the media have been consumed with coverage of Trump. I wrote a newsletter the other day about the New York Times, and the lead of my newsletter is about the New York Times turning Wordle into a primetime television show. And my editor, Ren LaForme, and I were both commenting like, wow, it's so fun to have something to write about that's not involved in Trump. Is that partly it might be partly our fault, and if you want to be critical, that's fine. Have we gotten sort of sucked in to paying too much attention to Trump, or is that nonsense? Can you not pay enough attention to this guy?
It's such a difficult question. I mean, yeah, there are times when you do get sucked into doing some things and you maybe give more importance to something that didn't necessarily deserve, particularly when you take the advantage of time and perspective and something like that. But he's the president of the United States, and he says and does things that are more outrageous and different from a lot of other politicians, that it's impossible to avert your eyes in many ways. And it's our job to tell what is going on and to reflect what is happening. And as part of that, sometimes you get sucked into the things that maybe you shouldn't have spent as much time on. I mean, the byproduct of it too is, like, I think there are a lot of people who get turned off to news because it's too much. It's too it's always an outrage. There's always something, and people get tired of something like
Sure.
that. And it's and he's not, an easy person to cover, quite frankly. I mean, doing an interview with him is there are a few that can do it really well, so it's a challenge, I think, that he'll probably leave office without us really solving.
Have we ignored a story, or have we spent so much time on Trump that there's a story, at least from a media angle, that we've not covered well enough, or that we need to cover more of? Has there been a story that you say, well, it really deserves more media attention than what we've given it over the last 5-10 years?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, what we talked about with the local news industry and the news industry in general, it's one of those slow moving stories that sometimes you lose sight of because it doesn't have the excitement of a daily news break. And I think that's something that's really important. I think the rise in some of the independent journalists that are out there, people that have gone into business for themselves and have created some of their own things. I think it's something that I myself felt I did not do enough of, and I think perhaps media writers don't reflect as well, the changing habits in the way people consume their media and consume news. I can't say that of everybody. I said that of myself. I mean,
No,
I thought that was a
I
weakness of
agree
what
with you. I've fallen into that same thing. I think because, I think I have quote unquote traditional news consumer habits.
Sure, sure.
I read newspapers, I watch the evening news, I watch cable news. I don't know that I pay enough attention. So when people like Don Lemon or Jessica Yellen, people do something completely different and on their own and independent. I sometimes am at a loss to how exactly do I cover this,
Yeah, and it's the habit you're not necessarily in. I mean, I didn't really listen to podcasts as much, certainly as with the exception of yours, Tom.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
As much as a lot of other people are, and now that I have some time, I'm starting to get into it more, and it's how people get their news. I don't go on to TikTok, but it's how young people in particular, get their news. I mean, I did a story a couple of weeks ago about the Pittsburgh media scene, because they came very close to losing their top newspaper there. But as part of it, I happened to go into a class of a professor out there who was active in the media scene and talk to some of the students. And I always, whenever I'm in that situation, a classroom situation, I put it back to them. I say, how do you get your news? What sites do you go to? Do you get news through, YouTube or TikTok as much? And I'm always, I can't say surprised because it's happened a lot of times, but just you realize how different it is for a new generation in getting news, and you have to be reflective of something like that. Things are changing really fast, and there's a lot that's out there that I worry about that people don't know what to trust.
Right.
Whether what they're finding out there, whether it's something they can rely on, or whether it's something that's trying to troll them, or something that's doesn't have strict enough standards to tell them what is really going on. So people have to really be literate in their consumption of media, and I don't think many people are these days.
I know you brought up young people, and I know it's a sort of a cliche question at this point, but like, what advice do you have for, like, people ask me all the time, like, hey, I'm interested in journalism, I want to go into it, how should I do it? And I'm like, because again, what the path that I took, probably the path that you took, was just very similar, is that, well, you go get an internship somewhere and you pay your dues, and the media world's changed so much. Like, what advice would you have for a person today who's like, hey, I'm interested in going into journalism or going in to the media / influencer type role?
You're right. I mean, there was a clear pathway. I mean, it wasn't necessarily an easy pathway, but there was a pathway that people could go on back in the days when we used to do it. I am enormously impressed when I've been in classroom situations, and I've done a little bit of teaching, at the ability of students and the dedication of students. And some of the things that I've seen in the college media over the past few years has been really, really tremendous. There are a lot of really smart, dedicated people out there that want to be journalists and are really, really doing it as best they can. I don't know the clear path. I mean, I guess the thing I say is try and have a passion and follow a passion, a particular area that you're interested in, and just get out there and write. And maybe you don't necessarily get paid in the beginning as much, but try to create a presence for yourself, and that people get to know your voice. And maybe that's a way of getting out there, whether it's a blog or something like that, or whatever. I don't have a definitive answer. I mean, that's more for people that you know are in colleges and can give that advice better than I can. But it's hard. But I think there are pathways there, and I don't want to discourage people
Right.
because I think it's more important than ever to have a lot of strong journalists out there.
Dave, you worked at a place, the Associated Press, such a strong, trusted brand over the years. We've seen um, the trust, the distrust that audiences now have in the media, but it never felt like it affected the AP. The AP's always maintained that sort of level of integrity that it remains a trusted brand. What was it like to work at a place where
You didn't read my email, Tom. I mean, there are definitely people that have different views, and they see things in different ways. So, but it's the mission of the AP to be nonpartisan and to be as best we can to get the truth out there. I think is vitally important. I thought it was vitally important when I was working there. I think I thought more so every year. And it's tough. I mean, the AP's business to a large degree collapsed with the newspaper industry over the past 20 years. They've had to reinvent themselves, and find different revenue streams to survive and to maintain a strong news report. And I told the people in charge, I don't envy them. I mean, that's a really, really hard job. There are no real answers to it, but I always believed in that mission, and I think that mission is so important, and I'm glad they're sticking with it.
they are sticking with it, although changes are coming. They obviously, they've made some changes. They offered, buyouts and there are cuts and everything, which is why you decided to do what you did. But what is the AP? What does it look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now?
I mean, hopefully the AP can remain strong. I mean, as we find new revenue streams, the challenge is to be able to continue to have a strong, comprehensive report that will be valuable to people who want to buy it, and to people who want to go to the website and see what. I can't call the we and the they thing is really
I know.
difficult after almost 40 years. And I think that is a challenge to weather these kind of storms. I mean, when I started work in Albany, we had like about 20 people across upstate New York covering various things and editing and getting things out to, television stations and radio stations and newspapers, and that market kind of collapsed, and now they're down to next to nothing in terms of full-time people in upstate New York, and it's amazing when you see something like that. So keeping things going, I think is a challenge, and I think I'm optimistic because I think pound for pound the AP that I left it was better than the AP that I joined it. I mean, certainly you lose things when you lose so many strong people, but I think it's punched above its weight in many ways, and particularly a few years ago, and so I'm hopeful that things go well.
I won't end it on this note, but I do want to ask, like, you've been there such a long time. What was it like to leave after all that time there? I mean, is there a moment of like, is it like, are you happy? Are you depressed? Are you like, I'm sure it was such a big part of who you are. Not to all of what you are, but like, hey, what do you do? I work for the Associated Press. What was it like to sign that paper and accept the buyout?
It was very hard. I mean, it's still very hard. I mean, it's still kind of, as I say, I wake up sometimes with story ideas and things like that, and say, well, wait a minute, I don't necessarily have the place to go to do those things. I mean, that is difficult. But but at the same time, there's some freedom out there to try and do new things. That's pretty exciting to me. So I'm navigating it. It's been only 2 weeks, Tom.
Did you sleep
So,
in at least the first day?
I have a dog, Tom, that wants to get out at 6:30 in the morning and walk. So the idea of everybody said, you don't have to use your alarm. You can sleep in. And I was like, I say, good luck. Tell that to the damn dog.
What will you miss though, Dave? What will you miss about your job specifically at the AP?
I will miss being in the center of things. I mean, I loved writing stories and informing people and coming up with different ideas and letting people know what's going on and having stories that make an impact and be part of the conversation. That's something that you'll miss doing something like that. The challenge of whether you're covering something the right way or not, and learning things new. And I also, I mean, there are times when I was just able to have lunch with some really fascinating people, interesting people for different reasons. Maybe they have a book out or something like that, or they're an executive or something like that, that I wouldn't necessarily have access to if I was, Joe off the street.
Right.
And it's fascinating to me to be able to have that kind of time and to be able to ask people, sometimes impertinent questions about their lives and have that kind of curiosity sated.
Right.
So I'll miss some of that.
What won't you miss?
Oh, should I name? No, I mean, sometimes when you do a story, you get a lot of complaints from people that are involved in it or whatever about they want it a certain way, and you can't please everybody with something like that, and it's not your job to please. So getting into some of those kind of arguments or whatever, I won't necessarily miss.
Well, let's leave it on a positive note, Dave. What has you optimistic, or does anything have you optimistic about the future of journalism, the future of media? Is there a reason to still feel hopeful?
Yeah, I mean, I think I found that in the times when I've done some teaching and spoken to young people. I just see the talent that's there, and I see the drive with a lot of people, and the people that understand the mission that we understood it when we were young, and have the energy to go after it. I don't think you know I don't think that's disappearing. I think people understand the importance of that, and there will be people that will be out there doing some good work. And you see good work, on a daily basis. You see people starting new things. You see people at legacy outlets doing really good work. And the thing about journalists is instead of like bemoaning states of the industry as much as we do, because it's been our job, they put their head down and work, because it's very important. They understand the importance of it, and they love it. I mean, it's in your blood when you're doing stuff like that. And I think there are enough people that want to do that sort of thing that make me feel optimistic.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to miss. I'm going to miss linking to your stories in my newsletter. I know you're retired from the AP. You're not retired from the business, but I do want to take this opportunity. I'm not just buttering you up because you've already done the podcast here, but really, it's been a real pleasure and honor to read your stuff every day. And I'm going to miss getting ideas from you because I think you've done just an absolutely terrific job. So I hope you keep working. I hope you keep writing because I think what you do is important. And I thought the job that you did specifically, like I said, I link to it in my newsletter all the time. I'm going to miss linking to it as much as I have in the past. But
thank you very much. I'll miss. I'm still reading you guys, and you and a Brian Stelter and an Oliver Darcy at Status. I mean, some of the people that put out newsletters, it's a lot of work, and they do terrific jobs. And I read them late at night or early in the morning and think, oh, there's a story I got to do, or there's a story I got to do, and I should have done something on that. And it bothers me when I see somebody take take an approach on something that I wish I had taken approach on.
Well,
and
let me
something
tell
that
you,
I should have seen.
We'll say that back about you, because there were plenty of times where I thought, I read a David Bauder story and I thought, why didn't I think of that? That was such an obvious story to do, and you did a really good job on it. So, and you need to keep up, because you're coming back. We need you as a guest on this podcast. So
good. Give us more to talk about. I love it. I really appreciate the chance to talk to you.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks to everybody again. Thanks to Dave Bauder. Thanks to everybody for watching and listening. Reminder, we have now, 6 seasons up on the on YouTube. Most of them are on YouTube. You can watch them there. You can also check us out on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Check out past episodes. People like Jen Psaki, Chuck Todd, Tom Yamas, many more. We're on our summer schedule, which means we're going to come out every 3 weeks now. So keep tuned to the Poynter Report newsletter for the upcoming schedule, and we'll have it all there. Again, thanks to Dave Bauder. I'm Tom Jones. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Poynter Report Podcast. The views and opinions of this episode's guest and the host are not associated with nor reflect those of the University of South Florida. The podcast is produced by the Department of Journalism and Digital Communication at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg. Executive producers are Elliot Weiser and Ren LaForm. Our producers are Tom Jones and Stephanie Broughton. And our director is Christopher Campbell. And a special thank you to Neil Brown and Dr. Mark Walton.